Welcome, everyone, to Urban Healers Podcast. I am your host, Stephanie Naylor Lillard, and one of the mental health therapist associates at Urban Healing Counseling. Urban Healers Podcast and Urban Healing Counseling was founded by our CEO, Janaea Sadler, who cultivates an environment where asking for help is our greatest strength. Today, our podcast will focus on self-care for moms. I am super excited and honored to introduce our guest for today, Jamila Jackson Kelly, who is our Executive Director at Urban Healing Counseling. Welcome, Jamila.
Thank you so much. That welcome was, I really felt that. Thank you so much.
Well, we are just so excited to have you. I cannot wait to our listeners tune in because we've got some hot topics to talk about today. We're going to focus on self-care for moms. This happens to be one of the most talked about topics that is trending, that I'm seeing out on social media and even when talking to people in person. And so we are just so happy to have you here with us to talk to us about some of the things, some of the expertise you can give us in that space. But before we get started to hear all of the wonderful tools, techniques, and just wonderful opportunities of knowledge, we want you to tell our listeners a little bit about yourself.
All right, gladly. Well, my name is Jamila. Like you said, I was raised in North Carolina, been in the area for quite a while, and I'm a licensed clinical mental health counseling supervisor, and I'm also a doula trainee. And so I've really kind of expanded my knowledge in the last few years with all the advent of all the virtual spaces and classes to really take advantage of that. So I really enjoy helping people. That's why I got into the profession. I have social workers and counselors in my family. And so it felt natural when I went out to do it. So I've been in the field since 2008 is when I got my master's. And I've worked with addiction. I've worked with mental health. I've worked with domestic violence survivors. And so, I've enjoyed it all.
Wow, that is just so phenomenal. You know, for our listeners out there, I want to make sure you heard that she has two areas of expertise. And that's why this, self-care for moms is just so, I just cannot wait to get into this topic. Jamila says she's also a doula. So on top of being, phenomenal in the mental health space, she's also a doula. So I've never met anyone with those combined expertise. And so I'm just sitting on the edge of my seat, excited about what you have to tell us. And so in going into the, self-care for mom space, I wanted to get your, expertise on, starting out with the physical self-care for moms and sort of what type of, words of wisdom, could you sort of let us know about that piece?
Okay, gladly. So you mentioned the doula training that I've undergone recently. I really wanted to become a doula because my experiences of child care and childbirth and the whole process were really actually quite positive. And I really got such a newfound respect for my body during those years. And so, I feel like I should support anyone who I know is a birthing person and going through that, because no one should be alone during that. It can be quite sacred and just a really special time when the body's changing so much. So with that, what I really got from it was this intuition. Like, our body really has a lot of knowledge. And if we kind of tap into that and get kind of clear with ourselves and what's going on, it's giving us little signals along the way, right? And so I think that's just kind of getting very intentional and kind of, paying attention to what's happening in the body and then treating that, right? Instead of just going for like a whole body thing or, just looking outside for other influences, kind of turning within and figuring out what does the body need to kind of get back that homeostasis and that balance again. So that can look like a lot of different things. Physically, we obviously want to tend to kind of check off the boxes of sleep and nutrition and exercise and see what that looks like. So generally we want to get 7-8 hours of sleep at night. And as a mom, that can be very difficult, but we try to get as much as we can. There's no harm in naps. There's a very powerful movement with the nap ministry. I know that's on social media and, there's power in naps. So get the rest where you can. And then also the nutrition piece. What makes your body feel great? What can you eat and feel really not only satisfied, but also feel like I'm doing good for my body? And I even like to think of food sometimes as medicine, because we're putting those nutrients into our body. And so whatever you're putting in, you're going to get out as far as your energy and how you feel. So you want to make it as high quality as you can. And then, of course, being hydrated is very important. Our body is made up of mostly water, so we want to keep that going. And so, hydration is important. Some people like to use teas or infuse it with fruits. This depends. I personally love water. Once I got turned on to it, really, probably during my first pregnancy, I started carrying a bottle then, and I always have a bottle wherever I go. Just nothing quenches my thirst quite like that.
Well, you mentioned some really key and powerful tools just now, but what I've noticed, and I see, listeners that are listening in and sort of talking in the chat, really, really talk about how do you get access, to healthier foods when you live in a food desert, a place that does not have high quality food markets for you to shop in. And then if you do, may not have the money to purchase some of those high quality foods. So, what are some workarounds or some resources out there that our listeners can sort of, go online or call to sort of, get access to those things?
Those are great points, and it's very true. Unfortunately, the places where we need this great food, it's often where it's not found. And so, with things like Instacart and all of that, that's great to bring it to you. But if you don't have the money or the means to kind of pay for those services, then you're kind of left at square one. I would encourage folks to, just do what you can with where you are. So let's say you have a grocery store in your neighborhood and maybe they don't have like organic produce. Get the fresh produce that you can. Look for the sales. When I was getting divorced many years ago, I was known for pinching a penny and stretching a dollar. Like, I really looked at the sales. BOGOs are great, right? You don't have to buy both to get the half price. You can buy one and get the half price. And so just really utilizing sales. Seasonal produce, you want to buy what's in season because that will be cheaper. And then if you can't buy fresh, then frozen's always a great option. They're flash frozen at the peak of freshness. And so that can do well in all of your recipes. You can make smoothies, you can have fresh vegetables at dinner. Honestly, I use fresh veggies for my kids. It just makes it easy so they can have a kind of a pick of what they want and we can change it often. So, those are kind of some of the tips I think of when we talk about food access. And also there's food pantries and cupboards in different communities. So just, maybe seeing what resources are out there.
Well, those are some excellent things for us to follow up with. And I hope our listeners are, listening to some of these resources that they may be able to dial into their community, whether it's through their church, whether it's through their local community center, or whether it's through their local county office, sort of giving your county office a call, and they have a list of resources that may not be posted online. And for those that, have impairments, may have some specialized services that can deliver, those better options, especially if you have some financial constraints. So thank you so much for that. Well, Jamila, I know there's other self-care for moms, that you want to talk to us about. And I know earlier in our preliminary conversation, we talked about the emotional well-being, and how self-care plays a role in that for moms, maybe new moms that are real brand new, and maybe those existing moms who could use a few other tools and techniques to be added to their toolbox. So we're just sitting on the edge waiting for your answers and responses. This has just been such a hot topic across social media.
Yes. Self-care. The buzzwords have kind of been out there for a few years, and people think of like spa treatments and candles and incense, but it's about more than that. It's really about getting to the root of what you need and meeting that need. And so when we talk about emotional self-care, we want to feel grounded. We want to feel like our life is in control, because as a mom, especially if you're working or if you have a partner, or even if you're on your own, especially, it can be really overwhelming. And so just finding a place where you can be like, okay, I've got this under control and this is what I'm going to do, and be clear-minded about it is really important. So how do we get to that space, right? And so we've got to take that time for ourselves. And people, give you the advice, oh, you got to take care of you first and you got to do that. And practically that doesn't really all seem to pan out, right? We've got kids we've got to feed, we have practical things that have to be done. So it's like, right, when am I going to really take care of myself? So steal those moments when you can. Sometimes it's after the kids go to bed. Maybe you wake up a little bit earlier to get, a moment to yourself, to ground yourself before the day starts. It can really include a lot of things. Keeping in touch with others, having community is also important with our emotional self-care. So, maybe you've got a mom that you keep in touch with and you guys are both struggling, but you just send a text, here or there throughout the day to tell her what you're doing or, encourage her. I've got a mom friend like that. Our boys were actually best friends in the 3rd grade and we still keep it put together. We're quite close. And so having that support system is great. And when we have time, we go get dinner one night if we can. It has got to be a whole, we got to plan the whole thing. And the boys usually come with us. It's like a double date, but it's fun to have those touch points to talk with each other and support each other. Because when we feel alone, that can really affect our emotional well-being as well. So we don't want to feel isolated. So really just tuning in with yourself and figuring out what do you need to feel like you're in control, because you are in control. So what do you need to surround yourself with to really make that a reality? And then touching base with others so that you can feel supported as well.
Wow, you said some really key important elements, and I want to break it down a little bit for our listeners. We're so inundated with information, and sometimes we just have to slow down and sort of, like you said, really like, breathing, maybe some deep breathing and just noticing what's around you. Many people in our field may call that present moment awareness, but becoming aware of what's around you and maybe celebrating just being in that space. You did touch on something else too that we're finding more and more, clients sort of talk about to us and people in the community. And I've heard this in many of the community centers and different places that we go to meet people where they are. And that's isolation, loneliness. Have you had instances or had people come up and talk to you about, how do you promote care for yourself while having feeling lonely and unsupported, or that not having the right words to communicate your feelings in that moment as you try to address your well-being concerns?
Yes, that's a very real concern, especially as we come off these years of the pandemic and, we were all sent home to stay, and socially isolate. It really was, it hit some people more, harder than others. And so just depending on how your household is set up, if you had to stay away from everybody and you're the only one in your house, what are you supposed to do? So I will say the silver lining of the pandemic was kind of all these networking and virtual opportunities. I participate in a lot of activities that are for my emotional, mental, spiritual, and physical self-care just through Eventbrite and, different things I find online, social media. Of course, getting too attached to this can be kind of a shadow side of it and it can be too much, but in right balance, you can really find a lot of opportunities to connect with others. So whether it's a mom group or they're trying something for the first time, I found some Zumba classes and yoga classes and people that have similar, thoughts like you, or, you want to learn a new skill. There's opportunities for this. And a lot of times they can be free. I've hyphened a lot of things over my calendar that are just things I found like, hey, I should sign up. Don't harm me, no foul, just sign up and see if I feel like going when the time comes. So there's community out there. And I think we were able to see that since 2020, just with the vibrancy of all that's presented online. And so I would suggest, going to meetup.com, eventbrite.com, the usual social media channels. There's also things on, IG and Facebook, lots of events out there, YouTube, lots of ways to connect with others, but definitely moderation. We don't want to overdo it and get, kind of strained by that, because there is like that Zoom fatigue that some people have as well.
Yeah, that's true. That is so true. You bring up some really great points. I think many times people get distracted very easily. I think since the pandemic, we do get a little bit more distractions than usual, from scrolling through our phones, but not really addressing our wellness concerns and not really taking time to celebrate ourselves. And, when we think about that, self-care for moms from the spiritual, uh, the mental health from the spiritual well-being side of things. Can you talk to us a little bit about that and how maybe practicing, spirituality or their religious framework or the universe or nature, can you tell our listeners how that can be incorporated into their spiritual and mental well-being?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it all comes down to intentionality. So being intentional about what you're consuming online, really in all facets of life. And I'm trying to be better about this recently and not kind of opening every breaking news thing that's on my phone. Like if it's a negative story that someone got murdered or something terrible happened, like I don't need to know about all that. Like I'm trying to be an informed person and balanced. I want to know what's going on in the world, but I don't want to inundate myself with too many negative messages. And so being intentional about what we choose to digest, because we are digesting those things as we read them and even hear about them and watch them. And so when it comes to spirituality and religion and faith, those platforms are also, out there. I actually attend service often with my church on YouTube on Sundays because it fits into my mom life. It's hard to get my kids out early. Usually in the mornings, my husband's out running. He's a marathon runner, so that's kind of what he does on Sunday mornings, take that long run. And so I'm by myself with the kids, and I was like, you know what? The easiest thing for me to do is I can still get my connection to church by watching it online. And so a lot of different communities are still doing that, or offering some kind of hybrid format since the pandemic. But there's also wonderful opportunities to like meditate, for instance. And it's not even just, locally. There's a group that I don't want to say I'm involved with, but I get their emails and I signed up for their meditation, and they're in London and they do lunchtime meditation. And lunchtime in London is 8 o'clock.
Lunchtime meditation. Oh, we might have to jump on board some type of way of start. Or Urban have their own version of that. Urban Wellness podcast. Oh my goodness.
That would be wonderful. They do it. It's not every day of the week. It used to be every day. I think now it's like 4 times a week. But I get the email an hour ahead saying lunchtime meditation starts at such and such. And here, of course, it's 8 a.m. But it's nice to be able to meditate with some people halfway across the world. And so, they read something or they do a guided meditation, but it's very calming. And for me, it's a great way to start my day while they're trying to get a midday reset. So there's lots of platforms, lots of opportunities out there to connect with others, or just, hear guided meditation for yourself and do it as part of your own routine. So lots of opportunities.
Well, we often get asked the question in our field about, how can we create those opportunities? And sometimes we're just so caught up in the busyness of life that it's good for our listeners to be able to, listen to this podcast and get a few more ideas about, how to give yourself self-care. Sometimes part of self-care, and people may relate this to be spiritual or just becoming a better version of yourself, is sometimes letting go of some of the anger, letting go of some of the disappointment, and understanding that it may not have anything to do with you, so that you can practice some of these wonderful, powerful tools and techniques that you just mentioned to us on today. And I know we weren't scheduled to talk about this, but I think our listeners may be really okay with me asking you about what is the role of forgiveness in the moms, loving themselves, self-love for moms, self-care for moms and others, or caregivers, or those who take on the role to nurture and give to, children. Can we talk about the role of forgiveness and how that can affect the way you look at, self-care and giving your space to have self-care?
Absolutely. And actually, I'll tie it back to what you just said, because we really need to look at what's going on in our lives and let go of that doesn't serve us anymore. And so when we let go of that which no longer serves us, we can kind of get to, the root of what we really need. And because all the clutter is out of the way. And so in that sense, forgiveness fits in there, right? Because if we're holding on to this resentment and this anger and, she did this to me 15 years ago, or, something that really is not serving us now, it's just taking up space. Well, we can have something that's joy-filled there instead. And so forgiveness really, and this is said a lot, but forgiveness isn't about the other person, it's about us. Because when we hold on to that resentment, it's doing something to us. so-and-so might not even know I feel this way about it. I've been holding on this for years, right? And it's not affecting her. She's not living her best life, but it's affecting me. So the moment we learn to really let go of that's self-care right there. That's self-love, because we're allowing ourselves to heal in that place. And then we're making room for something even greater to come in.
Wow. Now I told you all, I told you, audience, I told you she was powerful. I told you that this was going to be power packed. She just provided some real jewels. And at the end, she said, it's really about you and that letting go, right? And we will have many more podcasts, following this one that talks about several other key points and subjects that we mentioned here today. But on behalf of Urban Healing Counseling and our listeners, we want to thank you, Jamila, for just gracing us with the opportunity to interview you today, and look forward to you being a recurring a person that comes and provides pearls of wisdom to our listeners. So all the information and transcripts will be available, and you can go to urbanhealingcounseling.com if you want to get more details about Jamila and other clinicians that service our community. Thank you so much.
Thank you.